Honey, have you seen my gray miniskirt? This question may seem quite innocuous to you, but in fact this was the beginning of the war. Let me back up a bit and explain. I was married to Melanie, a third-grade teacher, for several years. We've had a great marriage so far. Then Tanner reappeared. Tanner was my wife's longtime ex-boyfriend. For me, he was just a name. He returned to the city in July for a short period of work and asked about Melanie. My bitch sister-in-law, Beth, gave him all her contact information. In fact, looking back, she did it with obvious pleasure. Beth told me I needed to be careful because Tanner and Mel were a good match. So when Melanie asked permission to have lunch with him, like a fool, I said yes. Long story short, my wife started seeing Tanner almost every day for long lunches while he was working, and she was on summer vacation. A month or so later, she came to me and confessed. It turns out they had a very long, very hot relationship, which he ended when he got a job far away from here. He left her, and she was devastated for a long time. She began to rebuild her life by starting a serious relationship again. Tanner then came over for a week and ruined the relationship after she had sex with him for 3 days in a row. She eventually met and married me. Of course, I knew nothing about this story until she confessed to me after she said she cheated. We quarreled. We cried. I wanted to know what she intended to do. She refused to promise to stop having sex with him. He was sexual perfection. She swore she didn't want to lose me and said if Tanner asked her to leave me, she'd go crazy. Isn't it cute? She won't stop seeing him for me, but she will feel conflicted if he asks her to stop seeing me. I started making a fuss, and Beth, my sister-in-law, called and told me off, saying that if I didn't let this happen, I would lose her completely. Mel also told the bastard that she told me. Since I didn't leave her right away, she will now take advantage of her freedom to see him after work and on weekends, even though she has vowed to be secretive and still loves me. At this stage, I didn't want to lose her, but I felt helpless to stop this madness without the extreme measure of divorce. She made an appointment right away and wore the same gray miniskirt that we bought together during our date. When I protested that it was my thing, she said she wanted to look pretty for him as she walked out the door. I felt like I lost her to my ex. I felt as bad as I've ever felt when I walked into the bar. My friend Keith, who had previously experienced problems in his marriage due to infidelity, suggested that I meet with Ed. He was a bartender. When I entered the bar, I almost walked out. There were quite a lot of people in the room. The woman laughed. It was a full, deep laugh that reminded me of Melanie and, of course, what she was now doing and probably laughing with Tanner. The fun didn't match my mood. However, Keith insisted that I talk to Ed, so I tried not to wince and walked up to the bar. Ed was dressed in the traditional bartender style, white shirt, black vest, and mustache. I was almost looking for those stupid armbands you see in old black and white photos, but apparently he wasn't so pedantic. He took one look at me and shook his head. He pulled a couple of bottles from under the counter and began pouring. He placed a glass in front of me. "Have a drink." I looked at him questioningly, but he simply pointed to the glass. I bravely took a sip and immediately almost spat it back out. My God, it was terrible, I almost screamed, looking at him accusingly. I almost grabbed him by the vest and would have slapped him in the face. Instead, I looked at the glass. "What is this?" He chuckled. "Yes, it must be. It's olive and onion juice with a little pepper and bitterness." I glared at him even more. "Why did you do that? I won't pay for it. This is at the expense of the establishment. But I made you angry instead of depressed. You don't look like a beaten dog anymore, and I bet you haven't been thinking about anything for the last 2 minutes." I thought about it, and he was right. Of course, just realizing this brought everything back. But it was hard to concentrate on this when I wanted to grate my tongue with a cheese grater. "I'm Ed. Looks like you need to talk." Oh yeah, it was hard to tell the details of my cuckold to a stranger, but Ed had an answer for that too. He placed 4 glasses of alcohol in front of me and said that he would come back to chat after I had finished them. I got over it quickly, and we started talking about innocuous things. My job, my car, what teams I support, etc. He pointed out a few pretty girls, and we made appropriately masculine comments about their physical attributes in low tones. Ordinary men's conversations. After some time, I developed a painful expression on my face. I wonder how many of them leave stupid husbands at home, I said bitterly. Bingo, Ed said. He excused himself and headed towards the dark corner of the bar. He exchanged a few words with the visitors, and they smiled at him, quickly finished their drinks, and left. He is back. Why don't you sit there? The night is young, and the people are thirsty. When things calm down, we can chat a little. So I did. He kept me professionally warmed up to the point of smoothing out the rough edges of my sadness without causing me to lose consciousness or show sentimentality. A couple of times I wanted to get up and leave, but I remembered the promise I made to Keith. A couple of hours later, the last customers were leaving the bar. Ed motioned to one of the waitresses, who sighed. God, Ed, do you ever close? I think your therapy sessions are just an excuse to avoid cleaning. She smiled when she said this. Don't be rude to me, Ribbe, or I'll fire you. She rolled her eyes. Promises, promises. She set down a couple cups of coffee before she emptied the pots and began cleaning up the back of the bar, leaving us alone. We started slowly. I started talking, saying only that my wife was cheating on me. Gradually, he began to ask questions, quietly and simply waiting for my answer. I didn't really want to talk about it. In this day and age, it is humiliating to reveal that you sit and accept a situation like this. I was going to tell only the bare minimum of facts. It's funny, but slowly but surely I told Ed more and more. It didn't all fall out at once. No, it was like puncturing an abscess. Sometimes he would have to ask questions while massaging the wound, and a little more pus would flow out. At a certain point, he asked a question that again broke my heart. It's okay, sir. We just cut a little deeper to get the last bits out. It won't hurt you. What made me do this was compassion. There was not a drop of pity or sympathy in his expression. They would make me shut down instantly. No, it was an expression of compassion. I suffered, and he suffered too. I saw that my words hurt him almost as much as they hurt me. It's a strange word to use to describe another man, but it seems like I learned a lot in those days. I fell silent and just sat there, embarrassed. He sipped his coffee for a long time. So, what do you want to get out of all this? He asked delicately. I wish this never happened. I want Melanie back. I wanted Tanner to be eaten alive by rabid Dachshunds, but how do you accurately articulate that to someone you just met? I want my life back. Your wife, doesn't she refuse you sex? I shook my head. So, can you accept this? Just accept the role of backup husband? He said softly. I apparently winced and shook my head vigorously. Okay, at least you have self-respect. But don't you want to leave her? The final wiggle. If I just leave, he'll have everything, but I've already lost. He beat her. Nonsense, Ed said angrily. He didn't win anything. There was no contest. You fought to keep your wife. But your sister-in-law fought and is fighting with you to allow her sister to do this. Tanner, of course, wants to continue to have a woman for whom he does not have to pay, and your wife, who should be fighting to keep you two together, is fighting on his side. You, my friend, are in the minority, and they are trying to convince you that this is all normal, that the smartest thing to do is to accept her little one. Flirting. But why? I screamed. Yes, I screamed, I'm ashamed to say. Because your wife doesn't think she's going to lose anything. Can I see her picture? Slowly, I took the wallet out of my pocket and handed it to him, open in the photo. Ah, yes, very beautiful. Any man would want to sleep with her. No wonder. No wonder what? I asked sadly. No wonder she thinks she can do this. She thinks she won't feel any pain, that she's the package any man would want, and that you'd be a fool to throw her away. You need a plan to get her out of this. Misconceptions. But what if I lose her? Yes, I screamed again. I started to hate that I sounded like a big whiny baby. Why did you marry her? Ed asked, looking at me with a raised eyebrow. Because I love her. Because she's beautiful. Because we were really good together, emotionally and sexually. Because I loved the way she made me feel. I answered as honestly as possible. Do you still like the way she makes you feel? We sat for a long time that night, developing a plan. The next day, I found myself at home on the couch. I've never suffered from a bad hangover, but this one left me with a decent headache. I wandered into the kitchen, my head throbbing in sync with my heartbeat. Knock, knock. If I had the ability to count at this moment, I would know my pulse. I remembered what Ed and I discussed until late into the night. Heck, I even had notes on a pad. It was a mistake. Part of the plan was to let it all sneak up on her. I quickly hid it under the file drawers in the bedroom office. So, you want to keep her? Ed asked me again. I want to try. I'm not going to give up on this marriage. Okay? That means you can't give her an ultimatum. She's made it clear that you can't ask her to give up that Tanner asshole, but he can ask her to leave you. If you give her an ultimatum, which, frankly, you've already practically done it, although you phrased it rather weakly, then even if she leaves him, she'll hate you for making her do it, and it'll probably ruin the relationship just as much as if she ran away with that asshole. Exactly. Also, you can't do something stupid like kill this traitor or even beat him up. But we'll talk about that later. So what should I do? We were a little drunk. You stay put and try to remind her of all the things she loves about you. You need to make the choice very clear to her. It might cost you some money, he warned. This is already costing me my marriage and my self-respect. What kind of money is there? I said sadly. Are you saying I'll just stay with her, and when he's done sleeping with her, I'll just pretend like nothing happened? He frowned. Is this what you want to do? No, I want to win. Well, there's a win and there's a win. You stay until she comes to her senses. Everyone makes mistakes. What you'll do is give her chances to make the right choice. What if she makes the wrong choice? He looked sad and shrugged. Then you too will have a chance to make your choices knowing what's going on, and you'll give yourself time to prepare. Get ready, but he did not say more on this topic. My first stop was the office supply store. This was something I wanted to do for myself, not something I discussed with Ed. I was carrying a large one-page year calendar to the checkout when I passed the pen rack. The colors caught my attention, and I looked at the display case. Having finally chosen, I took the red and blue markers, paid, and left. In the apartment, I hung it in the bedroom, which served as an office. I secured it to the wall using washers and screws drilled through thick laminated paper and into the studs. I was full of anger and didn't want it to just go away. Plus, using tools made me feel more masculine in a way. Then, starting January 1st, I started marking each day with a little blue check mark in the corner of the day. This went on for quite some time, but it distracted me from the fact that Melanie was still not in the apartment, and she was at Tanner's, having him unconscious in the gray skirt I had bought her. I mentally noted this small moment. When I got to July, during the lunch I had foolishly allowed her to have with Tanner, not knowing the history of their relationship, I began to draw little red crosses in the corner of the day. They were not very noticeable, but if someone focused on the calendar, they saw a sea of blue, and then red spots that became more and more frequent. Every time I thought or suspected that she was with Tanner, the day became a cross. Finally, I came to the day, that terrible day, when my wife, my beloved wife, told me that she had cheated on me and wanted to continue doing so. I looked at it and ended up sticking the red marker straight into the calendar and into the drywall. Crap. So much for subtlety. Now I had to go back and replace everything. At this stage, Ed and I were sipping imported beer because we were in a strange state of mind. Okay, it seemed reasonable at the time, but we were both half drunk. I'm a little confused about the timing of her confession, Ed said slowly. We both spoke slowly now, and Reba looked at us with displeasure from time to time. What do you mean? I asked how the owl was. You said she had sex with him at lunch while you were at work. He took long lunches. I nodded. Yes, she was at home. It was summer. She's a teacher, I said, helping him. Did she tell you at the end of August? Closer to the middle, I said, not understanding what he was getting at. When does the school year start? He asked meaningfully. It felt like some giant was squeezing my chest, pushing all the air out of my lungs. She came to me confessing her love and guilt, saying that she respected me too much to continue to cheat. My face had to go pale because Ed said, "Ah, now you see it too." And I understood. She told me in August because the school year and her responsibilities were starting soon. She won't have free time to go with Tanner and sleep with him at lunch because she will be busy at school, teaching the kids and watching them during lunch break. I didn't know where exactly the bastard lived, but I highly doubted he lived close enough for more than a few quick moves in her limited lunch time. And if she met him after school, she risked the fact that I would come home early and notice her absence. I'm being deceived. She doesn't love me at all. My stomach filled with acid. Well, I'm not sure I'd go that far. Generally is a strong word, but she's definitely torn and mistreating you. She seems to be making more of an effort to stay with you than she has in the past, if that means anything. What she should do is stop it with him or stop it with you, and not torture you with these half measures. Torture. Yes, he hit the nail on the head. That's exactly how I felt. Torn by wild hope and devastating doubts about my masculinity, her love, and our future. If she loves him so much, I was on the verge of crying again, I'm ashamed to say it, why doesn't she just leave? He sighed. Maybe for many reasons, but if she was practically his stalker in the past days, then you know that there is some reason for this. You'll have to find out. She returned from the weekend with him. It was tense for a couple of days after that. She didn't discuss it, although she tried to act normal. I watched a lot of TV and drank beer. I can't say I tried to be warm, but like Ed said, I tried really hard not to be an asshole. All it would do is push her away and hurt me too. I needed to maintain the moral high ground. If she wanted to wallow in the mud, that was her choice. I needed to show her how bad a decision this was. She must have felt a sense of loss. We didn't have sex. I didn't feel the desire, and for some reason she didn't come closer to me either. On the other hand, after a couple of nights of sex, she was probably completely satisfied. Things were starting to get back to normal, or at least a new normal. We discussed household chores and work and what needed to be done around the house. "Darling," she asked, "have you seen my gray miniskirt?" "For what?" "I wanted to wash it, and I can't find it in the basket." She was carrying a large basket of laundry. "That's because I already took care of it." "It's not in my closet. You really need to hang it so it doesn't get wrinkled," she chided me flippantly. It had been a joke of ours for years to criticize how another handled laundry, ironing, folding, where specific items should go. Paired items. "Which box did you put it in?" "I didn't put it down. I threw it in the trash can." I took a sip of my soft drink. "Why did you throw away my skirt?" She began to get angry. "Because it wasn't your skirt. It was my skirt. You gave it away. And when I looked at it, it was dirty, and I don't want to see it anymore." She looked at me for some time from under half-lowered eyelids. "Is there anything else you want to throw away?" she said with obvious subtext. "Not at the moment." I didn't take my eyes off the TV. I decided to put a few more cards on the table. "You said you would be very careful. That it's just sex. That's all well and good, but I consider discretion to be top damn secret. If I hear that someone saw you with him, if I find out that you walked with him in the park, I immediately go to a lawyer. I want to make this clear. You have made my place in your heart clear." She raised her hand to stop me, but I continued. "You did. You want to boost his ego and make him feel like a conqueror. It's so painful I can't even begin to describe it. So if you have one hope, one prayer for us to stay together, you will go to his house and have sex with him, and that's it. This is non-negotiable. If it's a sexual hobby, then let it stay that way. But if you start dating him and going out in public with him, it's over. Dot. How often do you have sex per week?" Ed asked me out of nowhere as we drank half a bottle of vodka. Sorry, until Tanner or after? Anything. He waved his hand for me to continue. I don't know. 3, 4, 5 times a week. And how long does this last? It's pretty personal. He simply tilted his head to the side. Okay, let it be half an hour or so at a time. Per session, sometimes 2 or 3 sessions a night. My thoughts went back to how she said she had sex with Tanner for 2 hours the day before yesterday. So let it be 3 to 6 hours a week at best. Yes, there are only 168 hours in a week, so most of the relationship actually takes place outside of bed. You want to try to hold her. This means you need to deny her the opportunity to have a non-sexual relationship with him. Give her an ultimatum. Yes, but sex in bed includes watching TV, massages, cuddling, talking. He shook his head. I know, and she'll probably have dinner and watch movies with him. There's nothing you can do about it. But she can't show her boyfriend. She can't share it with anyone. It's better if she's locked in a room with him. But she said she had sex with him almost every day for a month. Hopefully, the glamour wears off soon for one or both of them. What if he doesn't disappear, or if she lies and starts bringing him out to people? I insisted. He shrugged helplessly. She seemed to think it over. Okay, if that's how it has to be, that's pretty much all we do anyway, she said, twisting the knife. Why did she agree to this so easily? This only raised more questions. She watched me for a few more minutes and went into the back room. She remained there for some time. When she left, she went to her room, changed clothes, and walked out the door. She didn't tell me where she was going, but I knew. She went to Tanner. I tiredly got up from my chair, went into the office, took a red marker, and put a small red cross on today's cell. This was, as they say, the first salvo. I showed her the whip. Now it's time for the gingerbread. This is not entirely accurate. My time away from work was a mixture of carrot and stick. Now is the time to start shopping and be proactive. Surprisingly, she came home after work and immediately came to me on the couch. Sorry, it wasn't pretty, and I promised to tell you where I was going and when, so I broke the contract. She hugged me and kissed me for a long time. Thank God I could taste the toothpaste. Agreement. There was no agreement. It was her will to do what she wants, contrary to my wishes, and her self-justification. But now I saw that she wanted to continue the conversation, so I decided to interrupt her and put my words in first. Yes, and I also wanted to apologize. Here. I took out a large gift bag. She gasped in surprise and opened it. Inside was a briefcase that she had long wanted for her birthday. Since I was quite thick-skinned with gift items, hints, and tips, she was quite straightforward and told me exactly what she wanted. I just wanted you to know that I appreciate you so much more than anyone else. And I will never buy her sexy clothes again so she can wear them for that asshole. She noticed what I was doing. Wait, this is not your old laptop. No, guilty, I said with an indifferent look. Since you won't be around as much, I decided I needed something to distract myself. I looked at her, daring her to make a single comment. I went to Best Buy and bought one of the more expensive models and put it on our credit card. She looked at me carefully, and I saw a million comments running through her head. Well, he does look nice. She stopped again, struggling with herself. Well, you were such a good guy about Tanner. Guess I can't complain, huh? No, you cannot. I said it straight. It will be an expensive betrayal. And I'm not a nice guy. I still want you to stop dating him. She hesitated and pretended not to hear it. A very useful talent. Well, what do you want for dinner? Oh, by the way, she started again. I interrupted her again. Here, I said, handing her the envelope. She blinked in surprise. What is this? Something else? Oh, that's not much. These are tickets to the Blue Man Group show at the theater this Friday. Mel stared at me, clearly shocked and torn. I wish you had let me know sooner. I've already made plans for this Friday. She actually looked me in the eye when she said it. It's like bribing my wife, I said dejectedly. Ed winced. Well, how many women do you see marrying homeless people? Women want providers, people who meet their needs. Sex is just one of them. You need to make sure you meet her needs. Do you think he gives her gifts? Do you think he spends even a penny on her? She is a free pleasure for him. So you need to make sure that you look after her, take her out into society, and make sure that he can't do the same. He took a long sip and continued. Besides, if all your friends see you doing all this for her, and if something goes wrong, he trailed off, and I nodded. Twice this week, I took her to dinner and dancing. Twice this week, she told me she was going to meet Tanner. Mostly, she was only gone for a few hours. After all, these were work days, and she had a lot to do during the day. Every time after she returned, I would go to the laundromat, and that outfit and those underwear would go in the trash. I don't think she noticed, at least not yet. She looked a little guilty every time she came back and didn't say what she was doing. I didn't press for details. I simply asked, "Were you with him?" And she always answered, "No." It was satisfying. For now. The next day after work, Melanie sat at the kitchen table in front of a huge stack of papers, rushing to check them. As a teacher, she brought home a lot of homework and graded it. She had tests and lesson plans and had a lot to do this week. She saw me and smiled, moving the chair next to her and beginning to divide the shot glasses. In the old days, we would sit down together, and I would help her break them down, making funny comments about her students and testing each other's math. These were our bonding moments. I went to the refrigerator and had a beer. Darling, I'm so glad you're here. I'm just overwhelmed with work. I have 3 lesson plans to do and a test tomorrow, and I'm behind on my homework. With her facial expression, she made no connection. That was what we did. It was something steamy, and it put me in a difficult position. I loved helping her. I liked supporting her. It was one of those little things we did together. But if I help her, I'll make it easier for her to date Tanner. Sorry, honey, I'm tired and I have some work to do on the computer, I said regretfully. Darling, I really need your help. I know, but I'm tired, and the reason you're falling behind has nothing to do with me. Wait a minute. You took me out twice this week. It's as much on you as it is on me. Frowning slightly, I thought about it. Then I took the papers and put them in a pile. I set aside a quarter of the stack. You're right, I'll do it in the office, and every time you fall behind because of me, I will gladly help you, but only then. Can't you just sit here and make them? She asked sadly. Okay, I gave up, and I did more than what I offered. We had a great time, but the gargoyle hanging over our marriage was in her head, and I gave in just this time. Friday came, and she wore one of her sexiest outfits again. I was sitting reading a book when she walked across the living room. This is your last chance. Blue Man Group is only this weekend. I can promise you that you will be much better off with me than there. You get dinner, sex, and a show. She just grinned evilly. Yes, sure. Honey, I don't see any reason why you won't change the dates to Saturday. I'm just here for one night. I cannot. I didn't go into detail about why. Well, I already made that promise, so. I made a mental note to put a red X for today. She kissed me on the lips and walked out the door with a small travel bag. Yes, I was seething with disappointment, but I saved face. I had places to go and things to do. I woke up late the next morning and, surprisingly, Melanie was home. I got out of the sheets. Her side of the bed was untouched, so she didn't sleep with me. But she was preparing breakfast. I looked at my watch. Late breakfast. I wandered into the bathroom to relieve my bladder, brush my teeth, and wash my face. While I was brushing my teeth, I heard our landline phone ring. I heard Melanie answer. At first, she spoke cheerfully, and then her voice became wary and tense. She quickly ended the conversation. I saw her in the mirror. She was looking at me with an indescribable expression on her face. It was Abby. She said she had a great time at the Blue Man Group show with you yesterday. She stopped. You didn't tell me you invited Abby and Ryan to come with us as a couple. No, I replied, lathering my face with shaving cream. She wanted to know why I wasn't there. They were surprised that I wasn't there. Didn't you tell them I'm busy? No, I replied, continuing to shave. What did you tell them? She asked carefully. I said you had other plans that you couldn't change. They couldn't go on Saturday, so I left it as is. We had a great time. Damn it! I could arrange everything if you gave me all the information. Don't play these mean tricks. Wonderful. Very well. It wasn't enough for you to go with your husband. I had to go with my husband and something else. This is not a sneaky trick, and you had every opportunity to do the right thing and come with us. I didn't tell them until the last moment because I was hoping that your mind would wake up and you'd reconsider your plans to have sex with Tanner. Tanner will be in town longer than the Blue Man Group. Melanie was stunned. I think you're right. She came to her senses. But that still doesn't change the fact that you suddenly set me up. Why didn't you cancel when I didn't change my mind? Why? Would you rather me sit at home and cry because my wife found it more important to have sex with another man than to go out with her husband and friends? Sorry, I'm not going to wallow in grief. I had a great time. I lied. I spent most of the evening fending off kind questions and couldn't stop thinking about her in Tanner's apartment. I think I was a better actor than I thought. Besides, it would ruin their evening, too. How many lives do you want to destroy for your own pleasure? I asked. It didn't make sense, but it sounded good in my head. She stopped for a second, closed her eyes, and shook her body. You know, I won't worry about it because you won't let anyone know about it. I don't allow anything. And I slammed the bathroom door in her face. Damn, I cut myself. Then I went to the shower and cried. Her attitude became more and more contemptuous. The atmosphere in the apartment was cold all day on Saturday. She didn't come out, but she didn't talk to me either. Sometimes I wished we would move to a bigger place. When the tension became too much, I would do a few laps around the block. Sunday was something else. She made breakfast again and acted warmer towards me. Little touches. Jokes. What couples do. I offered her a walk in the park, and she agreed. No mention of Tanner, and I felt a little better. Later in the evening, she cooked one of my favorite dishes and asked me to wash the dishes. I agreed and heard her turn on the shower. I was just drying the last plate when I felt a warm stream of air in my ear. I ignored you, and I want to fix it. Go take a shower, and I'll be waiting. I turned around, and she was wearing a very beautiful negligee, a soft green color that matched her skin. Now I know what a lot of guys might be thinking, that I would have to end all relations with her. How could I sleep with a woman who was with another man? But I've already done this. She wasn't a virgin when we met, and she slept with Tanner many times before we met. This was not new, and ending all relations with her would mean depriving her of a key aspect of intimacy in a relationship. I may not have been as good as Tanner in bed, but I knew he didn't love her the way I did. Every guy who had sex with a girl with serial guys did the same thing as me. Why should I deprive myself of pleasure? Why give Tanner a monopoly? I stepped out of the shower and lightly applied the scent. I was clean-shaven and even straightened my hair, although it would soon become disheveled. I quickly checked to see if her toothbrush was wet. She was. She lay in bed, propped up on her elbow, with her legs decorated to show them off in the best possible light. God, how I missed her. I crawled onto her bed and put my hand on her thigh. Then we both leaned in and touched our lips, just lightly. Passion will come, but it will grow slowly. We just lay there, our lips lightly massaging each other. Every now and then one of us would cheat, and the other would feel the light touch of his tongue against his teeth, teasing each other. We continued this for a few minutes, then my hand lifted, and I ran my fingers through her hair, releasing the floral scent of her conditioner, a scent that said home to me. For some reason, she didn't seem to like it very much. She turned on her side, trembling. That was cruel. It was just terrible. I don't see the point in competing with sexual perfection. She turned to face me. At least Tanner is man enough not to mind. Her mouth suddenly made an "oh," and a look of shock crossed her face. I stood up and started walking towards the bedroom door. "Sorry, sorry," she shouted after me, knowing that she had done something unthinkable, something that she stubbornly avoided, except at the very beginning of this nightmare, when I strongly pressed her for details. I walked into the living room and started removing magazines from the couch. She ran after me. "Honey, I said something stupid. So stupid. Please go back to the bedroom. Please, you have to forgive me. I just spoke without thinking. I didn't mean to hurt you. I just can't." She pulled my hand and pressed herself against my back, which slowed me down by half. I finished and looked at the sofa. Then he turned and began to walk back to the bedroom. "Oh, thank you, thank you. Let me redeem myself. I haven't had a chance to really fuck you yet." She trailed off as I grabbed my pillow and went to the closet for a spare blanket. "You're behaving." She began heatedly, but finally decided to shut up and just watch me leave. I hate sleeping on the couch. It is uneven, cold, and narrow, but it was better than sleeping next to her that night. I still felt like I was losing, but I wasn't the only one, judging by the sounds coming from the bedroom. The next week was surreal. I looked through the newspaper every day to find interesting things to do for the two of us. Museums, performances, dances, and so on. And in the first 3 days, she agreed to everything, including a planetarium, for God's sake. I was desperate to make sure we spent time together as a couple, so that she understands that no sex, no matter how good it is worth our relationship. Periodically, she would take calls, chat for a minute, and then suddenly she would have to go to the bathroom or run to the store for something. I wondered if she thought she was deceiving someone. On Thursday evening, there was an unexpected knock on the door. Melanie went to the store. I opened the door. Standing outside was a clearly angry Beth, her sister. "What the hell are you doing?" she said, pushing past me. "Well, good evening to you too, bitch." Melanie is unhappy. She feels guilty and torn apart. She stays at home. She's upset. She's trying to put him out of her mind, but you continue to act like an asshole. Asshole, interesting description. And why on earth is her sister encouraging her to cheat and telling me to put up with it instead of supporting her happy marriage? She looked at me angrily. Then her face softened in a very unconvincing manner. "Look, we've been through this before. The relationship ended badly last time. There was no—" She searched for the word closure. This time she's trying to get it all out of her system. She doesn't want to leave you. I talked to her, and she's terrified by the idea. But she needs space. She needs to put her demons to bed. The only thing going to bed is her with that bastard. I opened the door, and you chose a side, and it's not my side. Don't call me again with your suggestions. Don't come here again unless your sister invites you. Don't worry, if she does, I'll try not to interfere." Her face twisted with anger. "You're making a big mistake. She'll leave you because of this. The only mistake I made was letting you talk me into it in the first place." "Do you know what she's doing now?" she said angrily. "Perhaps. And the only thing sadder than this fact is that you are happy about it. Isn't that strange?" She left in a rage. Melanie returned half an hour after Beth left. I watched her walk with the packages. "Did you have fun, honey?" I asked. "Yes. There was a madhouse in the store." "And how about Tanara?" Silence. "I dropped by, but only for half an hour." I just chuckled. We are back to understatement. I didn't believe her, but she was still honest in response to direct questions. "I've been a good wife all week," I thought. "Yes. I was planning to go to Tanner's on Friday night." Interesting definition. "What?" "Whatever. Do you want to go out on Friday? Another night out?" "I'm not sure. I just wanted to. I don't know. To relieve the tension." "Relieve the tension. Well, we can't interfere with that," I said with the least sarcasm I could muster. "Okay, I'll host my own dinner and watch a movie or something." She gave me a sharp look. You're not going to call our friends, are you? No. On Friday night, she seemed more cheerful than I had seen her last week. Do not misunderstand me. When we did something together, she seemed quite happy. But this time, there was some extra lightness in her step. The lightness of being that burned my soul like a laser. As promised, she prepared herself a light dinner, offering to cook for me, which I declined. I offered to do the dishes later so she could get ready, which she readily agreed to. I quickly cleaned myself up in the shared bathroom while she used the main one. She looked amazing when she walked out into the hallway. Her hair was neatly styled. She was wearing a semi-sheer, low-cut tank top and a new tight miniskirt that I had never seen before. It's interesting that she hid her clothes from me. The apartment is small. She wore stockings on her slender legs and wore black shoes with a small gold bow on the front. She carried a bolero jacket for cooler weather. I was seething inside. Firstly, because she was so happy, and secondly, because she put much more effort into this idiot than into any of our outings. She headed out the door a little before 7 and was surprised when I joined her at the door. We went downstairs to the parking lot. "Where are you going tonight?" she asked. "At Mitchell's Steakhouse," I said, starting the car. "This place is very expensive. We've already spent so much." She began to complain. "Tell me, and it's even worse since I invited your parents." I closed the door. I was already backing away when a completely white-faced Melanie stumbled behind my car, raising her hands, trying to stay in her heels and miniskirt before I drove away. I can't describe the look of horror on her face. She quickly ran to my window and knocked. I put it down, a little annoyed. "You're kidding, right?" she said desperately. "No. We haven't seen each other for a long time, and I hate eating dinner alone. That's why I invited them after you made your plans." "What did you tell them?" "Nothing. I didn't say you were busy. I didn't even say you'd be there. Do you mind? I'm already late." "Did you tell them I wouldn't be there?" she almost screamed. "No. I didn't think it was important." "You asshole. Calm down. The neighbors are watching. Do you want me to explain to them why you can't come to dinner with them?" Her chest heaved and she sighed deeply. Under other circumstances, I would have been a little nervous. How far we've come. "You have to call them. You have to cancel." "No, I don't know anything. This goes down to 3 scenarios. I'm going to dinner with your parents. They're probably almost there already. Second option, you join us. As my wife, you're always welcome in my plans. Third, you can call your mother yourself and cancel. But she will ask questions." This thought really scared her, and I didn't understand why, although you can be sure that I would think about it. "Okay, come with me." "I can't go like this. I look like an easy bitch." "Yes, you look," I said calmly. She gave me a furious look. Without wasting any time, she took out her phone and began to run away from me towards the apartment. "Hello, Mom? Sorry, but he's late today," was all I heard as she started running up the steps to our apartment, bouncing as she went. Looks like someone forgot their bra. Dinner wasn't too bad. The ride there was truly icy. She wore one of her interview sundresses and swapped out her makeup for something much less ladylike. It took her every minute of the trip to get herself in order. At some point, while we were still being seated, her phone rang, and she jumped as if she had been touched by fire. She simply reached over and turned it off, and then turned off the phone. I received many hidden glances from her. It was obvious that her mother noticed her tension immediately. She asked about her half a dozen times. Her parents liked me. No, let me clarify. Compared to how I felt about their bitch daughter and her pimp sister, the slight tension of dealing with 2 people whose daughter you're sleeping with was nothing. It was funny. Every time the topic changed and I decided to start or ask a question, Mel would become very tense, not knowing what I would say. Another grain for the mill. It was obvious that, unlike their other daughter Beth, they didn't know what she was doing, and she was terrified that I would tell them. Of course, the topic of grandchildren arose. "We're not ready yet," I said bluntly, stunning the 3. "Although we are still young, I have been an advocate for children from the very beginning. He says there are problems at his job and we want to be financially stable. Melanie tried to save the situation. Of course, we heard all the old truths about how no one is ever ready for children financially and that everything will work itself out. I nodded and ordered another bottle of wine. Hey, at least the steaks were good. If the trip there was cold, then the trip back could liquefy the carbon dioxide. How could you do this to me? She hissed as soon as we got into the car. She asked me a bunch of questions in the bathroom. I nodded. I told her we were having difficulties. Well, at least you didn't have to lie. That's basically where the conversation ended. When we got home, she ran inside and came out 5 minutes later with a bag. I'll go and have sex with him until he passes out. She growled as she passed me on the steps and walked away. Please do it. I muttered to her back. Maybe this bastard will bleed to death. Ed's place was crowded as usual. I went there a few times when Mel had Tanner, just to keep in touch, keep him in the loop, and get some moral support. I liked the atmosphere of the place, and I was no longer as depressed as before. It was much easier knowing that someone was on my side, that I was not alone. Ed placed a gin and tonic in front of me, which I drank delicately. He just smiled at me. How are things on the home front? Her parents don't know anything. I'm not sure what cares more, the fact that she's cheating on me or that she's cheating with Tanner, but she was horrified that I had dinner with them today. He rubbed the glass with a rag. What does that tell you? He asked, looking at me carefully. I sighed. Nothing. If I have to blackmail her into being a good wife, then the marriage is already dead and I can file for divorce today. I drank. But don't I do that now? The bartender frowned a little. It's similar, but there's a difference. You're just showing her the natural consequences if it comes out. You're not threatening to expose her. You're just making her feel uncomfortable with her false beliefs. She doesn't think I would dare expose her and kick her out, but she doesn't want it to become known. Ed winced. Well, here's something else for you to think about. I nodded, finished my drink, and left. I was damn surprised to wake up the next morning from the pleasure I was feeling. The drink must have put me pretty sleepy if she could pull the sheets and blankets off me without waking me. I double-checked to make sure it was really chalk. Isn't it sad? She looked at me with a smile that was full of regret. I'm sorry for what I said yesterday. You just... I saw a flicker of anger on her face, caught me off guard. You keep making something that's already difficult more difficult. I want to try to make things right, put things back the way they were. Sweet smile again, and it broke my heart. I lay down on the pillow and looked at the ceiling, no longer able to look her in the face. Okay, I wasn't going to tell them anything, you know. She crawled onto my body, resting her head on my shoulder, and her thigh was between my legs, rubbing slightly. Can we fix this? Have we messed it up so bad it can't be done right? Maybe. I paused. It was easier if I didn't look at her. I was planning a trip to Memphis this coming weekend. You and me. Nice hotel near Beale Street. BBQ, live music, boat ride. That sounds great. Honey, can we afford it? Probably not. She tensed for a moment and then pressed even closer. Okay, let's go. When do we leave? I'll drive you to work Friday morning and pick you up after school. It was a good day. She made breakfast again and started doing laundry. She's been much more attentive to it lately, probably because she's lost half of her sexy lingerie. I canceled her Victoria's Secret card and she didn't say a word. Lunch was quiet and I decided to do some minor chores, changing the oil in our cars, just to keep myself occupied. I had a lot of thoughts. She hadn't said anything about Tanner since this morning's revelations, and I didn't want to ask. After I finished, I took a shower and thought about it. She didn't make any promises. Is it because of her parents? Is it guilt, regret, love? After my shower, I approached her in the kitchen. She started preparing dinner. How about we just grab some hot dogs at the movie theater? I suggested. What? She looked at me curiously. Why don't we go to the movies? Go on a date. That thriller you wanted to see came out last week, and we didn't have a chance to go. She smiled after a brief hesitation. Okay, this will save me from doing the dishes. The film was everything you would expect. There was a ghost, a murder, and a poor, unfortunate wife. A film about revelations and learning about people. It was obvious even before the second act that the husband was the killer. It was an eye-opening film for me too. In one scene, the on-screen wife walked toward a closet that mirrored the room behind her. She opened it and took out a small box. When she closed it, a clearly dead woman was reflected in the glass. The director didn't use any musical lead-up to this point, so it was a complete surprise. Melanie didn't flinch. I'm sure there could be many explanations for this, but I chose the simplest one. I was no longer clutching at straws. That night, when she came to me in bed, I pushed her away. It's still too early for me. She looked sad. Let me know when you're ready. I turned over and fell asleep peacefully. Memphis was everything I could want. Not exactly a tourist paradise, but the food was good and Beale Street had a nice walking path with bars lining the street, always ready to offer drinks and company. The music was phenomenal. It would be ideal if I went with someone. On Friday afternoon, I carefully packed my bags and went to the airport, completely forgetting to stop at school. This may seem petty, but in a strange way, I didn't care. To save money, I turned off my cell phone so I could enjoy the trip without any distractions. However, by Sunday morning, I was feeling a little guilty, so I changed my flight to an earlier one, using one of Mel's credit cards to pay the fee. When I arrived home, I turned on my phone and noticed that I only had 6 messages. When I returned to the apartment, I found her sitting on the sofa, filing her nails. She glared at me as I placed my bags next to the kitchen corner. How could you do this to me? I had to call a taxi. At work, do you know how humiliating that was? I can guess. No, you can't. I was so happy that we could reconnect. I was looking forward to this trip, and you never showed up. You mean I ran away to have fun alone without caring how it would affect you? Yeah, I have no idea how that feels. She looked as if I had punched her in the face, then it turned red with anger. Why are you making this so difficult? I told you I was getting rid of him. No, you put him into your system. You spent more time with him than with me, and I know you dated and went places with him. Her eyes darted. What are you talking about? That movie. It was a thriller, and you didn't flinch in a single scary scene. Not once. Why is that? She changed the subject. You're changing the subject. Why are you trying to push me away from Tanaram? I would have thought that if you didn't want to lose me, you'd treat me with more respect. I looked at her for all of 5 seconds. Then he laughed in her face. Her face contorted in bewilderment. Do you want to lose me? My face probably looked mocking. I wasn't sure of my expression. Losing you? You know? For a while, I thought I was losing you to Tanner, that this guy was winning over me as a partner. But you know what? I was wrong. I tried to formulate my thoughts. The Greeks used a little wreath to signify victory, and the only person who can put it on your head is your partner. So I never lost to Tanner. I never fought Tanner. I fought you. You tore that wreath from my head and decided to put it on him. And that tells me everything I need to know about our relationship. You, she began. Enough. I said mockingly. Yes, I was clearly mocking at that moment. Then I waved my hand in a dismissive gesture. Come on, go to him. Because I've been thinking a lot about what you told me. If everything you said is true, I have nothing to worry about. If Tanner wanted you as a wife, he would have already. He didn't want that. He had a lot of chances. Your first relationship, your second affair, and now this one. So maybe I need to worry about you leaving for Tanner. But I don't have to worry about that. That he will take you away. He just wants to have you in bed, literally and figuratively. I'm sure he takes great pleasure in coming and ruining your relationship, and you're clearly stupid enough to let that happen. Her face turned pale, and her mouth opened and closed several times. You, you don't know what you're talking about, she finally managed. Of course not. I turned around and took the beer. While my back was turned, I heard the rustle of fabric, the jingle of keys, the sound of her bag being grabbed from the counter, and the slam of the front door. I sighed, like a dog returning to its vomit. I had a lot of time to think about everything she said and how she acted with Tanner. Every time he came into her life, she would drop everything and run to him to become his bitch. Then he left. This thought tormented me. She never left him. With a loud curse, I took the car keys and headed to the door. Even on a Sunday afternoon, Ed's was quite busy. The jukebox was playing tunes, and the owner himself was working behind the counter, talking quietly to several customers. He stopped the conversation when he saw that I was so upset and walked towards me. I was seething with rage. "What's up?" was all he managed to say before I grabbed him by his black vest and pulled him across the counter. You knew from the very beginning," I almost shouted at him. As my words faded, I realized that the rest of the bar had gone silent, except for the music coming from the jukebox and the distinct sound of many chairs being pushed away from tables. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up as I felt a large presence behind me. "Everyone calm down," Ed said calmly. "My friend here is having a rough day." I slowly let go of him and raised my open hands, making it clear that I did not want problems, especially not in the quantities in which they were preparing to dump them on me. Ed glanced at Rabaugh, who was putting the bottle on the shelf. "Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, were you going to hit him with a bottle of Glenfiddich? He's not such a good customer. He deserves a stick. If you hit someone with a bottle, hit that drunk Lenny. He's keeping this place afloat." There was a trill of laughter from the crowd, and the situation began to calm down. I no longer felt like I would be thrown unceremoniously into an alley, less or more whole. He looked at me and pointed to a dark corner. He placed a drink in front of me. "Care to explain to me what that was?" he asked carefully. He wasn't happy, and I can't blame him, but I was still upset. "You knew," I said in a barely restrained whisper. "You knew he was always leaving her. You should have seen it. You guessed about school. You knew she wasn't going to. Just." I felt the tears coming again, not because of Melanie, but because of a lost dream. Time until Tanner. Of what could have been. What I wanted again. In the last few weeks, it was no longer about Melanie as a person, but about the desire to return the dream. Melanie as an idea. Ed sighed and rubbed the top of the counter with a rag in a nervous tick. "I'm afraid I wasn't honest with you. It was never about the two of you reconciling. I knew it was a pipe dream." "Then what was it about?" I asked bitterly. "It was about so you could move on. These choices, these tricks. I wanted you to have a method, a way of counting. Every time she decided to leave, every time she chose not to be with you, I knew it would help you understand what you need to do. I never hoped for your marriage, but perhaps I could help you. I made her choices obvious, not allowing you to be comforted by false ones. Hopes where she pulled you by the nose with half-truths and assurances." "Then why didn't you just tell me to divorce her? Would you listen?" I thought about how I thought a few weeks ago. "No," I admitted sadly. "But you helped Keith's marriage." I almost screamed again, but I am proud that this did not happen. Keith's wife had a short, 3-time affair with a co-worker. Yes, she did wrong, but she felt guilty, and he was competing with a real person. It was not a month-long secret affair with a dream lover from the past. How can you compete with a dream? How can you make a person feel guilty if they are ruthless? I took a sip and exhaled slowly. "She's addicted," I said. Ed nodded wisely. "If you look at it as if Tanner was an addiction, it all becomes clear. The lies, the choices she made, the lies when she started to feel the pressure. But how can someone become addicted to another person? He's that good in bed," I asked. Ed shrugged. "He's probably not bad. But there was a scientist named Lawrence. He worked with goslings. He hatched the eggs, and they imprinted on him instead of the goose. They considered him their mother simply because he was the first thing they saw, I guess. That Tanner was her first, and she reacts, somewhat strongly. Sex is a powerful stimulus. I don't know enough psychology to understand what exactly is going on, but she seems addicted. So what do I do now? What happened? I explained the situation to him. So she ran to Tanner. I nodded, but it wasn't unexpected. She made it clear. But now you know that it was always her choice, and a choice that only she could make. Not Tanner, not Beth. You didn't fight Tanner. You fought her, and how can you win this battle? Unfortunately, I just shook my head. I stayed another hour or so. Ed and a few of the guys sympathized with me, and I did feel some closure. I was surprised when I pulled into our parking lot and saw Melanie's car. I frowned. It was unexpected. What was even more unexpected was that the black-haired figure, crying, grabbed me by the waist and held me as if her life depended on it. Oh God, it was. Sobbing, crying, sobbing he. I went there, whining, crying, sobbing, and he said to call, but I didn't call because... A flood of tears. If you're having a hard time following, you'll sympathize with what I was going through trying to make sense of her sobbing, snoring, and pressing her face into my collar as she said all of this. In the end, I calmed her down to a more or less rational conversation. I was so mad at you for what you said. Well, I went there, and he wasn't expecting me because I was supposed to go to Memphis with you, and it was too humiliating to let him know that you... Stay to the point, I said coldly. You drove me there. I ignored it to find out what happened. So I went into his house because he's the guy who doesn't lock his doors. And, yes, I was already starting to get bored. And Bet was there having sex with him. She started sobbing again. I pursed my lips and nodded in understanding. So that was her interest. What? She looked up at me from behind her napkin. I wondered why she was so insistent that you sleep with him. Why did she try to get me to give in? What? She repeated. Was she always this stupid, or did I just notice it now, blinded by her good looks? I mean, he probably slept with her first, and she had to give him your contact information since you had that history. I guess if she wanted Tanner, she had to pave the way for you. Why did she do this? She knows that he is mine. She clenched her jaw. I gave her a look of disgust. I guess someone couldn't shut their mouth about what their sexual ideal was, and a kind big sister wanted to give it a try. She was clearly destroyed by this, and I tried to find some spark of sympathy within myself, but nothing worked. So, what is next? I insisted. She looked down at her hands folded in her lap. And nothing. Really, the kind of guy who demands to have sex with you as he pleases, who brags about cuckolding me, and makes you buy sexy outfits for him with my money. He hasn't had any interesting offers. She blushed to the roots of her hair. He. She began to sob again. As I thought, good old Tanner wanted to take the opportunity to make Melanie and Beth a meat sandwich. Hence the sobbing wreck on the couch, looking at me with the first sincere emotional tug. I knew what would happen next, and I was not disappointed. Honey, we can fix everything. I can't. I just can't look at them anymore. He, betrayed me so badly, but we're still fine. You can still have me. I'm not against. Not against condoms. We can go to a psychologist or something. Expensive. I slowly walked up to the bar. Yes, slowly. Deal with it. Ed had already set my drink down. I was now a regular, although I was not turning into an alcoholic. I came for the sake of communication. When I got my things together, I took down the wall calendar, wrote on it, blue check, faithful wife, Red Cross, Tanner's bitch, and sent it to her parents. She needs help, but not from me. Her parents invited me to dinner shortly after. They were more upset than angry, although when their anger showed, it was not at me for speaking that way about their daughter. It turned out that the first time Melanie got involved with Tanner was in school, and he took advantage of her. lived in her apartment, and was such a bad influence on her that it took her a couple of years to get her grades back. When he got the job and moved away, she tried to follow him halfway across the country using her parents' credit cards. It wasn't just our relationship that she ruined because of him. The second time she was engaged until she went away for 3 days with Tanner, playing the role of a minx in public. And he left again, leaving her heartbroken and alone. They were most disappointed with Beth. She knew how vulnerable her sister was, and pushing her towards Tanner was unforgivable. I felt that any reconciliation with them and their parents would take a very long time. They shook my hand, hugged me, and wished me good luck. There was no question about what I would do. The only surprise to them was how patient I was with their daughter. "She didn't deserve you," her own mother said. I can't imagine worse criticism from my relatives. 3 times she had the chance to resist her hormones and not take a violent piece of shit into her life, and 3 times she failed. I was patient. Everyone makes mistakes, but she kept making them, and I wasn't going to be the interim sex between Tanner's visits. I didn't lose to Tanner. She was losing. Speaking of Tanner, I went to Ed to give me an alibi. He categorically refused. "You can't do it." "Why not?" "Because it's bad for your soul." I thought about it. "I'm actually a pretty good person. I think I'll risk fading a little." He looked at me. "Revenge will not bring you anything good, but justice is another matter." As it turns out, once he heard the details of my problem, he took some of his patients/clients/friends, and they did some research. It turned out that Mr. Tanner, in addition to being a sexual perfection for rather weak women, was also a civilian contractor at the local military base. They were responsible for updating the entire its structure in some buildings and, unexpectedly, were far behind schedule. Jim, who worked at the base, thought this was suspiciously unfortunate and discussed it with the fraud and abuse department. Long lunches aren't a crime in the military, unless people start paying attention. Suddenly, the soldiers and other civilian contractors were asking a lot of questions. Things started to get tougher. People began to work harder and explain their actions. This caused unrest at his work, and since Mr. Tanner's name was mentioned, he became a scapegoat for his colleagues for ruining his life. Ed spoke with a congressman whose son he had helped get through a bad relationship, and he had a conversation with the base commander. The company was warned. Tanner's name was mentioned prominently. Hank, a truck driver, drove through the town where Tanner originally moved from. Since he was here temporarily, he decided to rummage around. It turned out that Tanner had a regular girlfriend there who was quite serious with him. So serious that he made monthly trips back to see her. As far as I understand, Hank decided to have some fun and told 2 strangers in a coffee shop about how this lecher named Tanner was sleeping with girls left and right at work in Columbus. The fact that his girlfriend was sitting at the next table was purely coincidental. Judging by her comments and questions to Hank, she had a much less supportive and patient nature than Melanie. "So that's it?" I asked Ed. "He could lose his job and possibly lose his girlfriend for my marriage. That seems like little consolation for my marriage." Ed shrugged. "I understand how you feel, but we do what we can, not what we want. And karma has a way of dealing with people like Tanner. Besides, it wasn't just him." I nodded. Melanie was getting her karma. She didn't take the divorce well, especially when she found out how much debt we had accumulated. It turned out that, like adultery, if your partner accepts your purchases, they should be divided equally, and other than some cash advances that she didn't know about, we now had significant debt. There was a lot of room for growth in my job. Teacher, not so much. Psychologically, she was also a wreck. When Tanner left almost overnight, and at almost the same time as me, she didn't take it well, according to the hospital's insurance claims. I'd like to believe it was because I left, but I wasn't fooling myself anymore. Since her parents practically disowned her after she was stupid enough to break up her marriage over Tanner, she had to move in with her sister. I wished them all the recriminations they deserved. As for me, I forgot Melanie pretty quickly. I gradually started dating a girl named Tess. She's not as beautiful as Melanie, But she makes me feel good, fun to be around, and her idea of sexual perfection is to have me in her bed. And that's a definition I can live with. But you can be sure that we talked a lot about our exes. I finished my drink and decided it was time to get something to eat. Tess was busy tonight, and I was alone. After eating, I decided to watch a movie. I was standing in line for a ticket when I saw him, a guy with a lost expression on his face. He was wearing a wedding ring, but he was alone. The slight tinge of self-loathing was all too familiar to me. I approached him. "Hi, you don't know me, but I know you. I've been you. You look like you could use a drink. Why don't we throw away these stupid tickets and go see a man I know? His name is Ed."